Hi everyone, it's Mrs. Shannon. We're going to do Ecology Notes Part 2. Before we do though, I just want to show you, and if you found the screencast, you probably already realized it, that when you go into the Canvas website, you'll be able to find this in two spots. The first spot is in calendars. Actually, the first spot's in assignments. We'll go to assignments since I'm in this window. And you'll notice these are going to become participation grades. They will also be grades in your notebook, so make sure that you're doing them. Remember, you do get to use your notes on these screencasts on your weekly reviews. And you'll see Ecology Notes Part 2 screencast as an upcoming assignment. It's due September 16th. Also, you will notice on the calendar that these notes are going to be due on September 16th. It's right here. Now, for these notes, I realize it's sometimes a little difficult to start setting up your own Cornell notes. So what I'm going to start providing for you to put into your notebook, please make sure that you are using your interactive notebook. You are going to paste into it the Biology Cornell Notes, Energy, and Ecosystems. This is available to you in class. If you do not have it available in class, you may want to pause here so you can copy down this note section into your notebook. But please pick one of these up in class in the pink bin, and then you can just fill in the blanks as you go along. Now, remember, when you are watching these notes, please pause it if you need time. You can also go back and rewind it so you can follow along a little bit easier. Maybe some of the topics that you don't understand, you can go back and review. So we're going to talk about energy and ecosystems, and we want to know, where does all the energy go? Remember, one of the characteristics of life that we talked about is that to be classified as living, organisms need energy. An organism is one individual. Remember that too. So we know that to be alive, energy is required, and we know that an organism means one individual, and that's just from past notes. So where do ecosystems fit in? Now remember, we talked about the organization of ecology, with the biosphere being the parts on Earth where living things can be found, living sphere. That can be broken down into different ecosystems. Ecosystems are areas where living things and the environment interact together. Abiotic factors and living factors interact together, and there are smaller sections. It can be as small as a pond or a log, or it can be as large as the Midwest Great Lakes area. Communities, we take out the abiotic factor, and we're just talking about different populations of organisms. Populations refer to individuals that are the same species in the same area, and individuals we call organisms. So just remember that organization, and we're going to focus on the ecosystem level here. When we're talking about energy, we must know that there's two laws of thermodynamics. It's a fancy word. It just means energy laws. You'll talk a little bit more about this next year in ICP. Two laws of thermodynamics that hold true. Energy cannot be created or destroyed. What's here is what's here. We aren't going to create any more than what's available to be used, and we're not going to destroy or lose any along the way. Energy can be transformed into different types of energy, though. So we might start off with light energy, and it changes to mechanical energy or chemical energy. So it can change forms, but it's still going to be there. Energy flows through the ecosystems, and it cannot be recycled. It changes into different forms. We're going to find out it's going to start with the sun, and it's going to flow through the ecosystem, but it cannot be recycled. So how does energy flow through the ecosystem? It begins with the sun. That is our main source of energy. And then we have these organisms called producers to consumers. From the sun, the energy is going to flow from producer to consumers. And now consumers can be broken down into different levels. We have our first level of consumers, and those are herbivores. These are considered primary consumers. Secondary consumers are carnivores because they feed on the herbivores. And generally, third level consumers are considered omnivores. They're the third type. They can feed on producers or consumers. Some energy is also lost as heat along the way. And we're going to find out quite a bit of energy is actually lost as heat. So what are the different ways that organisms acquire energy? Well, they can be producers, which are the plants around us. They can be consumers like us, or they can be decomposers. Organisms that produce their own food from the sun's energy are producers, hence the word produce. That means they make their own food. They don't need other organisms to make it for them. These are also called autotrophs, which means self-feeders. Auto meaning self, and troph meaning feeder. And actually, I like to think of it as energy from food. Start associating troph with energy. Mostly this is plants. We have some photosynthetic bacteria and protists, especially out in the oceans. But most of the time, we're thinking of different types of plants that are producers, and they go through a process called photosynthesis to take this energy and make their own food. The next type we have are consumers, and we're consumers. Organisms that consume other organisms for energy, meaning we have to eat things. These are called heterotrophs. Different. Hetero means different or other feeders. All animals are heterotrophs. Herbivores eat grass. Carnivores eat meat. Omnivores eat a little bit of everything, but we all eat something. We all consume something. So we're heterotrophs or consumers. And then finally, we have something called decomposers. Decomposers are the ones that break down dead things. They eat, consume dead organic matter. That means matter that was once living, stuff that was once living. And they break it down and they use it for energy. We have something called the saprotrophs, and those are detritus feeders, also called the detritivores. And examples of that are fungus and some bacteria. So when you see a mushroom, for instance, this is a good example of a detritivore. It's a type of decomposer. It breaks down dead things. Now, oftentimes we show this relationship of energy moving through an ecosystem with a food chain. And you probably talked about these in middle school. A food chain shows the transfer of energy starting with the sun. It always starts at the sun to the producer, in this case, the grass, to primary consumer that eats the grass, and then to your higher order consumers. Okay. A trophic level is a feeding level. So we start using these vocabulary terms, and you may or may not have heard about this in middle school. Whoops, I just went ahead. Producers, we call the first trophic level, T1. They are the first organisms receiving the sun's energy. The energy that goes from the plants to the grasshoppers, now we're on the second energy level. And then we move to the third and the fourth. Okay, now we can identify the producers, primary consumers, secondary consumers, and quaternary consumers. And in each case, we always start down here with our producer, and there'll always be a plant. And we always move up the energy or up the food chain. All the energy starts down here, and then it moves up the food chain. Another way of showing the transfer of energy is something called an energy pyramid. And we'll talk more about these. We actually have something called a POGL that we'll use to examine it. An energy pyramid shows the amount of energy. So we're showing energy and we're talking about these food chains because a lot of organisms are consumers, and so they're eating food to get their energy. But now we're going to talk specifically just about the energy and not the other stuff that goes with it. And we talk about how much energy is moving up. So energy pyramids show the amount of available energy for each of these trophic levels. The weird thing, not the weird thing, I think it's kind of cool, is that out of all the energy available, only 10% is actually going up the trophic, the food pyramid here. Only 10% from each level makes it to the next pyramid. The rest of it's lost as heat. So 90% of the energy approximately is lost each time something eats it. And it's not just heat, it's also metabolism. So if you think about it and you eat a salad, you eat the lettuce, you only get 10% of that energy available in that lettuce. The rest of it's lost as heat and metabolism, or as it's broken down, different chemical bonds, and we can get into the biochemistry of it, and we'll talk a little bit about it later, but part of the metabolism process. So by the end, we only get 10% of that energy from that salad that we actually started with. The food chains show the available energy. So here we have the animals that are involved in each food pyramid, each trophic level. So we have our bottom trophic level, the second one, the third one, and the fourth one. And you can almost see the pyramid shape here. But when we're actually using the organisms themselves, then we are talking about a food chain. Now, a food web is when you take a bunch of food chains and you connect them all. They show the complex feeding relationships in an ecosystem. In each case, though, we always start with the producers when we start drawing our arrows. We'll find out we can actually start with the sun going to the producers. And sometimes you'll see that if there's a sun, and we should actually always draw a sun on there. This would have been better, and maybe I will add this later on, if we actually draw a sun here showing the energy going from the sun to the plants. But we have our producers, our first level consumers, and those are just herbivores. They just eat the grass. We have second level consumers. So here's from the plant to the herbivorous insect to the spider. Spiders are carnivorous. They only eat these little guys here. And then we have something called tertiary consumers. And in tertiary consumers, they're like foxes. And actually, I'll show you some other ones. You're going to see when you watch Amoeba Sisters that there's better ones that show that foxes also eat not just carnivores. They don't just eat other animals, but they also eat plants as well. The thing with food webs is there's usually so many arrows showing the feeding relationships that they don't always show every single relationship. And that's the thing with models. Models are selective on what they show, and depending on what the need is, they won't show everything. Models are just what the creator wants you to notice. If there's any questions, please let me know. You can send me a message in Canvas and I will respond back, but please make sure you have this information down. This should have covered a lot of the same vocabulary that was in the study guide from 13.3 and 13.4 that you completed while I was absent. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and end this. Actually, before I end this, I do want to show you, there's one other assignment in Canvas. It is Edpuzzle. There's an Edpuzzle on food chains. Just like before, you can log into Edpuzzle, and if you click on calendar, and you click on the actual assignment, I've actually started including a link there. So you can click on the link and it will take you to Edpuzzle. And just as before, you need a 70% to get credit. If you don't get 70%, you need it reset. Please, please, please send me a message and I will reset you as soon as I see the message. This is due on September 24th. If you could go ahead and do that, that would be great. Hope this helps.